He used to say, "You're my home." But one day, he packed his bags, walked out that door, and took the entire world with him. When I saw him standing with her, his new wife, wearing the same ring he once gave me, laughing the same way he used to with me, something inside me shattered so quietly, I almost missed the sound of my own heart breaking. But I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just watched. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest revenge. If you've ever lost your place in someone's life, only to find your strength in that emptiness, this story is for you. Please stay with me till the end. Like this video, subscribe, and I promise this one will stay with your heart long after it ends. When he left, it wasn't sudden. Love doesn't always die with a bang. Sometimes it fades like the last note of a song that used to be your favorite. We had been married for 11 years. Our mornings were quiet but kind. He used to kiss my forehead before leaving for work, and I used to pack his lunch, the same way my mother did for my father. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Then came her, a colleague, a friend, someone who understood him better. That's what he told me when I confronted him after finding her ring in his car. I still remember the look in his eyes, not guilt, not anger, just detachment, like I had become invisible. He didn't leave that night. He stayed, but in every silence between us, I could feel her shadow stretching longer and darker. I tried to fix things. I cooked his favorite meals, smiled more, talked less. Because that's what women are taught to do. Make it work. But love cannot be glued together by desperation. And one morning, over coffee, he said it. I think we both deserve to be happy. Just not with each other. I didn't cry. I just nodded, my hands trembling under the table. I remember how the spoon in my cup kept spinning, just like my thoughts. He married her 2 months later. 2 months. As if 11 years of my life could be erased by 8 weeks of pretending to move on. People told me to stay away, to rebuild my life, to let him go. But how do you let go of something that took your name, your place, your peace? I didn't want revenge, not the kind that hurts people. I wanted balance. I wanted him to feel what it was like to lose something you thought you'd never lose. The first time I saw them together was at his mother's birthday. Yes, his mother, the same woman who used to call me her daughter. She invited me, said she missed me, said it wouldn't feel right without me there. I went, not to make a scene, but to see. When I entered the house, everything looked the same, except the woman standing where I used to stand. She wore the same perfume I used to wear. She arranged the flowers the same way I used to. She laughed with his family like I once did, too loud, too eager. And him? He looked at her the same way he used to look at me, before guilt started to dim his eyes. For a moment, I felt the world tilt. I wanted to run, but instead, I smiled, because I realized something powerful that day. She hadn't taken my place. She was borrowing it. Months passed. They started posting pictures, vacations, smiles, perfection. Social media love stories always look flawless, don't they? But behind every filtered smile, there's always something real, something raw. And I saw it the night she called me. Yes, she called me. Her voice trembled when she said, "I shouldn't be telling you this, but he keeps mentioning your name." I stayed quiet. She continued, "He compares us. Sometimes. Says you were more patient, more kind, more peaceful." That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of joy, but out of realization. He hadn't moved on. He had replaced. But you can't replace peace with chaos or love with possession. I began focusing on myself, my art, my work, my small garden. Slowly, I started feeling something I hadn't in years, freedom. I began painting again, writing poetry, living softly. The woman I lost in that marriage came back, stronger, quieter, but alive. And while I rebuilt my peace, their cracks started to show. He'd call sometimes, asking random things. Do you remember that old song? Or what was the name of that place we used to go? Small questions that meant everything and nothing. And every time, I'd answer politely, calmly, because peace is the one thing he could never steal back. I saw them again a year later, at a mutual friend's wedding. She looked tired. Her smile was brittle. He looked older, as if time had caught up faster for him than for me. When our eyes met, he smiled. That familiar, regretful kind of smile. And in that moment, I knew. He remembered. Not the fights, not the endings, but the way I once loved him, fully, quietly, endlessly. And how he'd never find that again. I didn't destroy her life. I didn't need to, because the real revenge was in being unbothered, in living a life so peaceful that it echoed in their chaos. They say time heals, but I think time just reveals. It showed me who I was without him, and who he became without me. And when I stood outside that wedding hall that night, watching the city lights shimmer, I smiled, because peace, my peace, was the one thing no one could ever take again. So yes, his new wife took my place once, but in the end, I took her peace, not out of hatred, but because I finally understood. The loudest revenge is living silently in peace. It's strange how people can erase you while you're still breathing in the same world as them. You see them laughing, thriving, acting like your shared past never existed, and yet, somewhere deep down, they still carry your ghost in their chest. That's what I became to him. A ghost. In the beginning, after he left, I told myself I was fine. I smiled at neighbors, went to work, pretended I was healing. But healing is not a straight line. It's a loop, a haunting rhythm of remembering and trying to forget. Some nights I would wake up and still reach for him. My hands would meet empty sheets, cold and untouched, and I'd just stare at the ceiling, wondering how someone you gave your entire soul to could vanish so completely and so easily. His mother still called me sometimes in those early months. She'd talk as if nothing happened, as if I was still part of the family. Once she said, you know, Beta, he's not himself anymore. She's trying, but it's not the same. I remember my throat tightening as I whispered, maybe he's finally learning what he lost. She sighed. Softly, maybe. After we hung up, I cried, not because I missed him, but because I realized I had loved him enough to still wish him peace, even after everything. Weeks turned into months. The world kept spinning, and I, the woman he thought would break, began to rebuild myself from the ashes he left behind. At first, I didn't know where to begin. The silence in the house was heavy. I'd wake up and hear echoes of our laughter in the kitchen, smell the ghost of his cologne in the hallway, and it would all come crashing back. But I didn't run from it anymore. I let it hurt. Because pain, when faced, transforms. I started taking long walks again, the kind I used to take before marriage. I started painting. The first thing I painted was a woman standing in the rain, holding an umbrella that was half broken, but still covering her head. She looked tired, but strong. When I showed it to my friend, she said, "That's you, isn't it?" And I smiled. Yes, it's me. One evening, I saw them at the same cafe I used to visit. They were sitting at the table near the window, my table. She was laughing too loud. He looked distracted. I watched them for a moment, hidden behind my sunglasses, sipping my coffee. And in that silence, I felt something unexpected. Not jealousy, not anger, just pity, because I could see it. The cracks, the way he avoided her gaze, the way she tried to fill the space between them with words, laughter, and noise. They looked like a painting trying too hard to be perfect. All color, no depth. I paid my bill and left without them noticing. But as I walked away, I whispered to myself, you'll never find peace by stealing someone else's. My peace came slowly, not as fireworks, but as small flickers of calm. Morning tea in silence, new books, a single rose blooming in my balcony garden. Little things that reminded me I was still alive, still whole, still me. People started noticing. My colleagues said I looked different, lighter, radiant even. But it wasn't glow. It was freedom. Freedom from the weight of trying to be enough for someone who didn't even know what enough meant. One day, his sister messaged me. She said, he's not happy, you know. And I replied, that's not my responsibility anymore. Months later, he called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. His voice was hesitant, low. Hi, he said. I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Why? I asked calmly. Silence. Then he said, you always had this peace around you. I guess I missed that. Peace. That's the word he used. The one thing his new life would never give him. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Some things, I said softly, can't be borrowed twice. He tried to keep talking, small. Meaningless questions about my work, my family. But I could hear it in his voice, regret. The quiet kind that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. when we hung up. I didn't cry. I just sat there, looking at the stars, and whispered, you made your choice. Now live with it. Not long after, I heard from a mutual friend that things between them weren't perfect. Apparently, she felt threatened by his constant comparisons. By the way, he still mentioned my name when talking about calmness or understanding. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate, because I wasn't that woman anymore, the one who needed validation from someone's downfall. I had grown past that. Still, a small part of me, the part that once wept in silence, felt poetic justice. Not satisfaction, but completion. A year later, his mother fell ill. She asked for me. I went, not for him, but for her. When I entered the hospital room, he was there, sitting beside her bed. Our eyes met for the first time in over a year. He looked tired, older. I looked at him, then at his mother, and softly said, I've missed you, Emma. She held my hand with tears in her eyes and whispered, I always told him. Peace doesn't come from replacing love, but from respecting it. He looked away, and that was all the closure I needed. After she recovered, I visited a few more times, but each time, I saw the same regret in his eyes. He wanted to speak, to apologize maybe, but I didn't let him. Some words lose their meaning when spoken too late. Instead, I smiled, wished them well, and walked away. Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the ultimate act of power. He lost peace trying to chase excitement. I found peace by embracing stillness. That's the difference between us. And when I finally looked at myself in the mirror one morning, hair tied up, eyes calm, heart steady, I realized something profound. He didn't destroy me. He redirected me back to myself. And that, perhaps, was my quietest victory. You know, sometimes I still wake up at dawn and sit by the window, watching the sky turn gold. There's something sacred about those early hours, when the world is quiet and the only sound is your own breathing. It's when I feel her the most. My old self, the woman who once cried over love lost. The woman who once believed that her worth was measured by how much someone else loved her. But now, when I look at her reflection in the glass, I don't feel pity anymore. I feel gratitude, because she walked through hell, and she didn't just survive, she evolved. It was a few months after I last saw him at the hospital when everything changed again. I was offered a promotion at work, a big one. A position that required confidence, leadership, and emotional strength. All the things I once thought I'd lost. But life has a way of returning what's yours when you finally stop chasing it. When I entered that office as the new head of department, I remembered all those nights I doubted myself, all those mornings when I couldn't even look in the mirror. And in that moment, standing there, wearing my favorite black suit, calm and collected, I realized something beautiful. I had become the woman I once prayed. I'd had the courage to be. It wasn't revenge I felt. It wasn't pride either. It was peace, the kind that doesn't need to be proven to anyone. But life always finds a way to test your peace. One afternoon, while I was reviewing some reports, my assistant came into my office and said softly, "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you." Before I could ask who, the door opened, and there he was, my ex-husband. The man who once promised me forever and handed me silence instead. He looked smaller somehow, not in height, but in spirit. His shoulders, once proud, now carried the invisible weight of regret. He said my name softly, like a prayer he was afraid to say out loud. "I heard about your promotion," he said. "You've done well for yourself." I nodded. "I had to," I replied. No one else was going to do it for me. He tried to smile, but his lips trembled. "I came to say, I'm sorry," he said finally, "for everything, for leaving, for replacing something that was never meant to be replaced." For a long moment, I just stared at him, not with anger, not even with nostalgia, but with quiet understanding. He was no longer the man I once loved. And I was no longer the woman who needed his love. I said, "You didn't replace me. You just showed me who I was when I wasn't trying to be someone else's everything." He looked down, ashamed. "She's not you," he whispered. "She never was." I smiled faintly. "She wasn't supposed to be. You chose her, and that's your story. But I've written mine now, and in mine, I don't need to be compared to anyone." He looked around my office, taking in the photos, my mother's picture on the desk, the awards on the wall, the plants blooming by the window. "This feels like peace," he said softly. "It is," I replied. "The kind that comes when you stop waiting for closure from the person who broke you." He stood there for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I hope one day I can find what you found." "You will," I said. "But only when you stop looking for it in someone else." And with that, I turned back to my papers. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. The kind that comes from knowing your worth is not tied to someone's regret. He left quietly, no goodbye, no tears. Just the sound of the door closing softly behind him. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights shimmer like fallen stars. And I thought about everything. The love, the betrayal, the loneliness, the rediscovery. Sometimes, I whispered to myself, peace is the most powerful revenge, because when they expect you to crumble, and instead you bloom, that's when they finally understand what they lost. A few weeks later, his new wife reached out to me. I didn't expect it. Her message was short. "I don't know how you did it, but he still speaks of you like you're everywhere." I didn't reply, because that was never my goal. I never wanted to haunt them. I just wanted to heal myself. But perhaps healing yourself is haunting for those who built their comfort on your pain. The next day, I visited my mother's grave. I sat by the marble stone, tracing her name with my fingertips. "I did it, Emma," I whispered. "I found peace. You'd be proud." A soft wind passed through the trees, gentle, almost approving. And in that moment, I knew she was listening. I left a white rose on her grave. White for peace, for closure, for love that endures without bitterness. Today, I live quietly. My mornings are slow. My nights are peaceful. I laugh easily now. Not because my life is perfect, but because I finally understand that it doesn't have to be. He may have found a new wife. She may have taken my seat at his table, my title in his home, but she will never have my calm, my grace, my story. Because peace cannot be stolen. It has to be earned, and I earn mine through fire. So if you're listening to this right now, whoever you are, wherever you are, and you're sitting in the ruins of someone else's choice, remember this: you are not what they left behind. You are what survived. The day you stop waiting for them to see your worth, the world will start reflecting it back to you in ways you never imagined. And one day, when they look for the girl they thought they broke, they'll find only the woman who rebuilt herself into something untouchable, something whole, something free. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in what they lose. It's in how beautifully you rise. After they tried to bury you,